Hello students, welcome back to Accounting 2302, Managerial Accounting. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. And in today's lecture, we are going to be covering exercise 17-16. Chapter 17 deals with process cost systems. Now in this particular problem, we are going to learn how to complete a cost of production report, which is kind of lengthy. So as you've noticed my trend, I tend to select the most difficult problem in your assignment and go in detail over that specific problem. The majority of your homework problems do have a show me how video, but I like to go a little bit more in depth as to how each of the calculations are arrived for these longer problems. Okay, and most of the problems that I select, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, you will see them on your exam. Okay, so I am taking the time to go over them with you because you will eventually see them on the test. So I want them to be very well explained. Okay, so the cost of production report. So they are providing us with information about a roasting department for morning brew coffee. They're giving us our beginning working process and then the materials, which are the coffee beans that are added during the month for the production of the roasting of the coffee, right? So the requirements are all direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. So regardless if the production is completed in that specific month, the materials, all of the materials are accounted for in that specific month. So we're going to be classifying materials and conversion costs separately. So the materials will always be allocated at the beginning of production of the month that those materials were put into production. Okay, we are being asked to prepare a cost of production report presenting the following computations. Number one, direct materials and conversion equivalent units of production for August. Number two, direct materials and conversion costs per equivalent unit for August. The cost of goods finished during August and the cost of working process at the end of August 31st. Okay. After we are done with the cost of production report, we are being asked to compute and evaluate the change in cost per equivalent unit for direct materials and conversion from the prior month. So we're going to compare how we did this month in comparison to last month, to the July numbers, okay? So before we begin, it is important that we read the entire chapter. I know I sound like a broken record, but it is super important that we read, okay? Reading is what's going to help us understand the content, and some of this material can be a little bit confusing. So a cost of production report, what is that? Okay, in process costing, what we're covering? The cost of units transferred out of each processing department must be determined along with the cost of any partially completed units remaining in the department. Because in the real world, we would finish everything, but that's not how it works. You know, sometimes we start and we don't get to finish it all. So we need to be able to allocate those partially completed units remaining in the department, in each of the departments. Okay, so the cost of production report summarizes these costs in using the cost of production report. Okay, so the cost of production report summarizes the production and the cost data for a department as follows. Okay, so the units the department is accountable for and the disposition of those units, and the product costs incurred by the department and the allocation of those costs between completed, transferred out, and partially completed units. Now in your ebook you have a 4-step approach which is explained in depth. I am not going to go over it. I just want to show you that the information is there. So the cost of production report is prepared using the following 4 steps. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over the 4 steps, and then you all can go on your own time and review in detail the information under each of those steps. We've got information on 17.2a, 17.2b, 17.2c, and 17.2d. Okay, so the information is there along with the formulas and everything that you need. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over the steps in the cost of production report preparation. Okay, step number 1, you're going to determine the units to be assigned cost. Step number 2, you're going to compute the equivalent units of production. Step number 3, you're going to determine the cost per equivalent unit. And step number 4, you're going to allocate costs to units transferred out and partially completed units. Okay, so as I stated, all of those steps are clearly outlined in your textbook along with examples and great use of information. Please make sure that you do review that information on your own time. Okay, So now let's go and let's tackle the problem, okay? So the cost of production report is broken out into two sections, okay? The first section deals with the units, the second section deals with cost, okay? So let's look at the data, okay? So we are dealing with the roasting department for a morning brew coffee company, okay? So according to the data, we have beginning working process at the beginning of the month of 700 pounds, that is 20% complete at 3,479, okay? So that's the working process. It has been started, but it has not been completed yet, okay? We've got direct materials that were put into production, 700 pounds at 470, that's 3,290. And we have conversion cost, 700 times 20% times $1.35, 189. So that gives you the 34.79. So the 34.79 is broken down between direct materials and conversion, okay? So where did I read about conversion? Let me see. I guess I didn't put it here. But basically, let me see. Right here, okay? So when we are calculating the equivalent units of production, we are talking in respect to either materials or conversion. When they deal with conversion, they're talking about direct labor and factory overhead combined. So materials is classified separately, and usually materials is accounted for at the beginning, the month that it was put into production. Regardless if it's finished or not, the materials will be allocated that month that it was put in production. For the conversion cost, that's your direct labor and factory overhead. That varies dependent on when it occurred. Okay, when did the actual manufacturing process be complete? Okay, so we're dealing with conversion costs, which is direct labor and overhead, and materials. Okay, so here we have your materials make up $3,290. Your conversion cost, which is a combination of your labor and your overhead, $189, and that gives you $3,479. During the month of August, we added 14,300 pounds of coffee beans for $65,780. We had conversion cost, that's your labor and your overhead, of $21,942. And then we have working process of 400 pounds of coffee, that is 42% complete, and we need to calculate that. And our goods finished during the month of August is 14,600 pounds. That is what was completed during the entire month of August, and we're going to be able to calculate that, okay? So here we have the Morning Brew Coffee Company, and this is the cost of production report for the roasting department. Okay, so we have different departments, and we're wanting to figure out what part of it has been completed for the roasting department. Okay, and this is for the month ended August the 31st. Okay, so we are going to begin with our units charged to production. So we're gonna start off with our beginning inventory. Inventory in process, August the 1st. Okay. So what did we start off with last month? Okay. Whatever was not finished last month needs to be finished this month for sure. Okay. So we need to begin with our work in process. Okay. And according to the report, okay, work in process, there's 700 pounds of work in process that has not been completed. It's only 20% complete. So how many pounds do we have? And this is in whole units. We've got 700 pounds of coffee that have been put into production but have not been completed. Okay, so that's 700 units. Okay, now we need to figure out what was received from the materials storeroom. Okay, so we started off with 700 units of coffee beans, or 700 pounds of coffee beans. And how much more did we get during the month of August into production? Okay, according to the problem, there was 14,300 pounds of coffee bean added during the month of August. That is provided to you there in the problem. So we've got 14,300 pounds of coffee that were introduced into the process in the month of August. Okay, so my total units accounted for by the roasting department. Let me go ahead and wrap text, okay? And then to get the total, well, we started off with 700 pounds of coffee, then we added 14,300 pounds, that's given to you in the problem. So my total units to account for is going to be the sum of those two. So I'm going to add those two amounts together. That gives me 15,000, okay? That's the total units. Now, those are the units that are going to be charged to production, those 15,000 units. Now, we're going to go on to the units to be assigned costs. Okay. So, we're going to begin with our inventory in process. August the 1st. And it's 20% complete. Okay. So, if we look at the information provided, we have 700 pounds of coffee. It's 20% complete. Okay. So, how many units do we have of beginning inventory? We have 700 units. Okay. Now, out of those 700 units, or 700 pounds of coffee, 700 pounds of coffee, how much are the equivalent units? So, how much of those 700 pounds are we going to account for in the month of August? Now, it's very important that when we do this, we read carefully because it tells you here, all direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. Now, these 700 units, when were they placed in production? Were they placed in production in July or were they placed in production in August? Okay, and remember, this is work in process from last month. Okay, so because it was put into process last month in July, then the direct materials will be 0 because we didn't put any materials in production this month. Okay, the 700 units were accounted for in the month of July. So for materials purposes, we are going to have 0. Now for the conversion cost, that is different. Okay. Now the problem says that it's 20% complete. So that means if it's 20% complete, that means it's 80% incomplete. Okay. So I'm going to get my calculator. Okay. So it says 20% complete. 100 minus 20%, 100 minus 20, okay, 100 minus 20, that means 80% is incomplete. So we're going to get the 700 units and we're going to multiply by 80% because that is the portion that is incomplete. That is the portion that we're going to complete in the month of August, okay? And that gives me $560, okay? So we got the 560 by getting the 80% that is pending to be completed this month because the problem says 20% has been completed. So that means 80% will be completed in the month of August. 80% times the 700 pounds will give you the 560. Okay, that is the equivalent units. Yes, we have 700 pounds of coffee beans. But for direct materials purposes for this month, we're not going to account for anything because those coffee beans were accounted for in July. Conversion cost, 20% was accounted for in July, and then the 80% will be accounted for in August. So we have to classify it between the month that it started production and the month that it ended production. Okay. Now, let's focus on the next part. This is the one that started and completed in August. Okay. So, we have to do a little bit of critical thinking. We started and completed in August. So, let's look at the problem. It says here that we put into production 14,300 pounds. And then it says that out of those 14,300 pounds, 400 pounds were not completed. Okay, so those 400 pounds were not completed. So I'm going to deduct them. So that means that during the month of August, Those 14,300 pounds of coffee beans that were put in production, only 13,900 were completed in full in the roasting department, okay? So how do we do that? We get the 14,300 pounds minus the ending working process, which is 400 pounds, and that will give me 13,900. Okay? So now, out of those 13,900 that were started and completed in August, okay? So that is the key, started and completed. Remember, materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. Did we put these 13,900 pounds of coffee beans in production this month of August? The answer is yes. We put the coffee beans in production in August, so that means the entire 13,900 are equivalent units for direct materials, and 13,900 are equivalent units for conversion costs, okay? So the entire amount of units that were started and completed this month will be part of our calculation for the equivalent units, okay? So now we have to figure out how much is going to be transferred to finished goods in August. So to do that, we basically add the two amounts. Let me do a little underline here. So we're going to add those two together. Our beginning working process and what we put in production and finished it in that specific month. Okay. And those are our numbers right there. Okay. And then last but not least, we have to complete our ending inventory. That's the inventory that was not completed. Okay, that's that inventory that's in process. Okay, so inventory in process, August 31st. This is what we did not complete. And remember, the problem says 400 pounds were in process. Okay, so that's 400 pounds. Okay. Out of the 400 pounds, how much of that is going to be affected by direct materials? Those 400 pounds are in the current month, so that will be the entire 400. And for conversion cost, remember, we are putting the entire 400 under direct materials, even though it's just 42% completed, because the problem tells you all direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. So regardless of how much has been completed, for purposes of calculating our equivalent units, direct materials are placed into production 100% at the time they're put into production in that specific month. Okay, so in August we put 400 pounds of coffee beans. We might not have finished them, but the entire 400 will be charged for direct materials. Now for conversion costs, we are only going to do the percentage that was completed this month. The problem says it was 42% complete. So we have 400 pounds of those coffee beans and 42% complete. So that means that this month I'm going to charge $168 for my conversion. Okay. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to delete a couple of these. I don't need them. So that is the section here, and then what we have to do is just calculate our total. Okay, total units to be assigned costs. Okay, so I'm going to get what was transferred to my finished goods, which in August, which was 14,600, plus my inventory in process August 31st, and we're going to add those two together. And that will give me 15,000. For my direct materials, I'm going to have the 13,900 plus the 400. That's going to give me 14,300. And for my conversion, 14,460 and 168. Okay. So even though we have 15,000 whole units, for equivalent units, we're only going to account for 14,300 for direct materials and 14,628 for conversion costs. Okay. So that is my total units to be assigned cost right there. Okay. Now, We're going to go to the second part. The top part was just calculating the units to be assigned the cost. Now we're actually going to assign costs. Okay? So we're going to go on to the next section. Okay? Now we're going to calculate the cost per equivalent unit. Okay? So this is the total costs for August in the roasting department. Okay? So the total cost for August in the roasting department. Okay? So if we look here, the total cost in August for the roasting department was $65,780. That is given to you in the problem right here. $65,780. Conversion was given during August of $21,942. That is given to you over here on the table. Okay? Okay. Now we're going to get the total equivalent units that we calculated above. Okay? And we're going to divide by those amounts. Okay? We're going to divide by the total equivalent units. Okay, that's what we're going to do, divide. Okay, so what are my total equivalent units? So we're going to have our equivalent units, and we have for materials 14,300, and for conversion we've got 14,628. So we're getting these numbers from up here. Okay, so if your calculations on top are incorrect, then everything else will be wrong. So we need to be very careful. Okay. So we've got our equivalent units. So now we can calculate our cost per equivalent unit. Okay. Now let me underline this. Now to do that, we're going to get the 65,780 divided by our equivalent units. That's going to give me $4.60. Okay. We're going to get the 21,942 divided by our total equivalent units for conversion of 14,628. And that's going to give me $1.50. Okay. So that is my cost per equivalent unit. Okay. These are the equivalent units. That is my unit per unit cost. $4.60 for direct materials, $1.50 for conversion per unit. Okay. Now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and we are going to have the cost assigned to production. Okay. So we're going to start off with our inventory in process, August the 1st. So my inventory in process in August the 1st is 3,479. That is given to you right there. Work in process, 3,479. I'm going to bring that to the total. Okay. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in the cost incurred in August. Okay. Now, for my cost incurred in August, okay, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go ahead and we are going to add my cost for direct materials plus my cost for conversion cost. So you're adding your 65,780 of materials plus your conversion cost of 21,942 calculated above. That will give me my total cost of 87,722. Okay. Now we're going to get our total costs accounted for by the roasting department. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add those. That includes our beginning inventory plus the costs incurred during the month. Okay, so we're going to add those two together. And that gives me 91,201. Okay, so that is the total cost accounted for by the roasting department. Okay, the total cost. And I put it in the wrong one. Let me cut it and paste it up here. Okay, 91,201. Okay, so now from there, let me go ahead and do this. Okay, From there, we are going to go ahead and we're going to get the costs allocated to completed and partially completed units. Okay. So we're going to start off with our inventory in process. August the 1st. So we already said that our costs allocated to the completed and partially completed units for our inventory in process as of August the 1st was given at $34.79. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring that over as our starting point. And then to complete the inventory in process, August the 1st, okay? So now we're going to have to refer up here, okay? Inventory in process. So we're going to be looking at these numbers up here, okay? I'm going to highlight them for now. So to the units to be assigned cost for the inventory in process, August the 1st, direct materials, we've got 0, okay? So we've got 0, so that means that for my direct materials, it's going to be 0, okay? Now, if we look for conversion costs, we've got 560 pounds, okay? So we're going to get the 560 pounds or units, whatever you want to call them, okay? And this falls under conversion, so I'm going to get the 560 times my conversion cost of $1.50. So you're going to get your 560 times $1.50, okay? And that is going to give us, let's see what it's going to give us, 560 times $1.50. That's going to give me $840, okay? So that's $840 there. So your total is going to be the sum of those two numbers. That would be $840, okay? Now that was for our beginning inventory, okay? That was for our beginning inventory. That's the stuff that we did not finish processing in July that we had to carry over to August. These are the costs, the direct materials and the conversion costs associated with those 700, how many pounds were they? 700 pounds of coffee beans, okay? Now we're going to move on to what happened this month in August, okay? So now we're focused on the started and completed in August. Okay. Now let me unhighlight this because now we're going to change the information, okay? So for started and completed, we're going to look at this section right here of your report from the top, okay? Started and completed in August, okay? So we're going to have for direct materials, and we're going to be looking at direct materials, we have 13,900. We're going to get those 13,900, and for my materials, direct materials, my cost per unit is $4.60. So we're going to get the 13,900 from up here, and we're going to multiply it by my cost per equivalent unit of 460. That gives me 63,940. Okay. Now for the started and completed in August, for the conversion, it's also 13,900, but my cost per equivalent unit is $1.50 for conversion. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the 13,900 units at $1.50. That's going to give me 20,850. So we're going to put that down here, 20,850. And then we're going to get a total by adding the two. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to figure out what was transferred to finished goods. In August, what was transferred was the combination of what was started in July and what we started and finished in August. So what are we going to do? We're going to add those two amounts. Okay, let me see. So let me see. We've got that. Okay. I missed a line item. Let me see. I'm trying to think so many line items. So I am good here. The 91,201. Then I've got the 3479. Okay, so here, let me backtrack. Let me insert a cell here because I'm missing one item there. Okay, yes, I am missing, no, not there. I'm missing the item below the 3479. No, I've got it. Never mind. It's there. It's just that it, okay, so it's 3479, and then we've got the 840. And then after that, I am missing one item. Right here is where I missed it. Right here. Okay. So we've got that right. All of the calculations are good up to there. And then we've got the 840. And then here, all I'm missing is a total. Okay. So we have to calculate the cost of completed August 1 work in process. Okay. So for that, we're basically going to, for that particular line item, we're gonna, where did I add it? Oh, right here. Okay. We are going to add those two amounts. Sorry about that. It's just so many line items. Okay. So here I was just missing a total right there of 43.19. Okay. Very good. And then we go on to that one, which we've calculated correctly. Okay. So we are good. We were just missing that total, subtotal right there. Okay. And then now that we've figured out what was transferred to finish, what was started and completed in August, we can figure out what was transferred to finished goods in August. Okay. So what was transferred and finished good in August is going to be the total that we just calculated, the 43.19, which is the cost completed of August 1 working process, and what we started and completed in August. Okay, so the top section deals with the beginning inventory and what was pending to be completed for conversion costs for those goods that were started in July, which was the 840. And that gave us the 43.19. So now we can just simply add, let me underline this. We're going to get our cost of completed August 1 working process plus what we started and completed in August. And that will give us the sum of those two. That would give us 89,109. Okay. So that is what is transferred to finished goods in August. That includes a combination of what we started in July that we did not finish, where we're talking about those 700 pounds, and then what we started and completed in the month of August. Okay. Now we have one more component. What about what we didn't finish in the month of August? We didn't finish it all because if you recall, we put 14,300 pounds into production, and at the end of the month, we still have 400 pounds in production at 42% complete. So those 400 pounds are not completed yet. Okay. So now we need to account for that inventory in process because that's going to be our starting point next month. Okay. So we're going to have inventory in process August 31st. Okay. So according to our calculations, okay, how many units did we have inventory in process? So let me unhighlight that because I'm no longer using that information. Now we're going to go down to this section. Okay, so we have three sections that we use: our beginning inventory, the units that we started and completed during the month, and then our ending inventory, which we have 400 units, whole units. For materials purposes, those 400 units are going to be allocated in the month of August, and for conversion, it's going to be $168. Okay, because it's 42% complete. Okay, so let's look at our inventory in process as of August the 31st. Okay, and we're looking at direct materials. So at direct materials, we've got 400 units. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to get those 400 units, and we're going to multiply it by my direct materials rate of 460. That's going to give me 1,840. Okay. Now for conversion, it's 168. Okay, so we're going to do 168, and we're going to multiply it by $1.50. That gives me $252. So all you're doing is multiplying the equivalent units times the cost per equivalent unit to get your total down here. So we got 252. So we add those two together, and that gives us 2,092. Okay. Now I can finally calculate my total cost assigned by the roasting department. Okay. So to get the total cost, I'm going to go ahead and get my whatever was transferred to finished goods in August. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that to my inventory in process, and that gives me my total cost of, we're going to add those two, $91,201. That is the total cost assigned by the roasting department for everything that was completed during the month and transferred out of the roasting department. $91,201. These are all of the costs that include direct materials and conversion costs for the roasting process. Okay, so that is the dollar amount right there. Okay, and let me unhighlight this. That was just for reference as we're looking at the data, what we were looking at. Okay, so this is the total cost to be assigned to the roasting department for the month of August, $91,201. Okay, so that is requirement 1. You need to calculate the equivalent units on top, because this is what's going to drive your calculations on the bottom. That information there is what you're going to be multiplying against your numbers up here. Okay, for the inventory in process, for what was started and completed in August, and for the inventory in process at the beginning of the month. Okay, so that is the actual report that will need to be completed in detail. Now that is part A. Okay, now part B says that we have to compute and evaluate the change in cost per equivalent unit for direct materials and conversion costs. Okay, so let's do this on the side over here. Let me set it up for you. Okay, so the first thing, this is requirement B. Okay, so we're going to start off with materials. Okay, so from current period. Okay, current period is August. Current period, and I'm going to put here August just for reference. Okay, so how much was my direct materials for this month? Okay, we look at direct materials for the month. My cost per equivalent unit is $4.60. Okay, now from beginning inventory, this is from July, from last month. So where do we get that number? Okay, so if we look over here, direct materials in July, it was $4.70. Okay, $4.70 last month. Okay, so I'm going to put this $4.70 last month. $4.70. So we went from $4.60 to $4.70. So that means that we have a decrease of 10 cents. Okay, we have a decrease of 10 cents. Okay, so my materials, my equivalent units per unit, my cost per equivalent unit for direct materials dropped by 10 cents from last month to this month. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but now for conversion, my conversion costs. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this too. That way it's the same thing. Now for my conversion cost, we're going to look over here. My conversion cost per unit, we calculated at $1.50. Okay. Now according to the problem, let's see what our conversion was before. Conversion was at $1.35, okay, last month. So in this case, my conversion cost increased by 15 cents. So the cost per equivalent unit of materials decreased by 10 cents right here. Okay. So my cost of equivalent unit of materials decreased by 10 cents per pound, and the cost per equivalent unit of conversion costs increased by 15% per pound. So based on this information that we have here, now management needs to investigate what is causing the increase in the conversion cost. Why did my conversion cost per unit increase by 15 cents? Okay, and that impacts the bottom line. So we need to make sure to figure out what is causing that change, that shift, so we can be able to improve our process here. Okay, so that was the second part of the problem, to evaluate the change in cost per equivalent unit for materials and conversion. So now we've identified, in comparing the data from this month to last month, that we've got one decrease, 10-cent decrease in materials, and a 15-cent increase in conversion costs. Okay. So I know it is a lot. It is a lot of numbers. It is a lot of calculations. It's a lot of figuring out what percentage are we going to account for this month, what percentage we're going to account for in the preceding month, if the goods are not completed this month and we have to flow them on to the next month. Just remember, okay, be very careful and be very clear. All direct materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. Okay, so if you roll over merchandise from last month to this month in the manufacturing process, know that the month that it was put in production, that is when we're going to account for the materials. So if it's something that is being rolled over from a prior month, then we will no longer, that is what happened here, we will no longer have anything impacting direct materials. Yes, we do have 700 pounds of unfinished in roasting coffee or whatever it is that we have. We have 700 pounds that is in working process, but we're not going to charge any direct materials to it because those materials were charged already in July. Because remember, materials are placed in process at the beginning of production. Now this month we are going to charge the $560 for conversion. That is the 80% that we are going to complete this month because 20% was already completed last month. So in the month of July, we were charged 20% of conversion cost and 100% of direct materials. In this month of August, we are charging 0% to direct materials and 80% of conversion costs. Okay, so that's like the trickiest part I think students have understanding, when we're dealing with working process from a prior month. The same thing if we're rolling over, like the case here where we have ending inventory that we started but we did not complete. We've got 400 pounds that is not completed. This month, this is when we put it into production. I am going to charge the entire 400 pounds to my direct materials, and I'm only going to charge 42% to my conversion cost because that is what's completed in the month of August. Now next month in September, my direct materials will be 0 and my conversion cost will be, what's 100 minus 42? Let's see, 100 minus 42. Next month, you'll charge 58% of your conversion cost in September. Okay, so it's just a matter of dissecting the information and understanding what is it that we're going to charge this month, what are we going to charge next month, so we can be able to calculate the correct equivalent units of production. Okay, so I hope this video helps you out. It has a lot of information. The chapter has a lot of information, a lot of examples, a lot of calculations. Please make sure that you do read all of the chapter before you attempt any of your problems. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to either stop by during my office hours, send me a Blackboard message, an email, or a Pronto message. Just please be specific in your question and do show me your work. Show me a screenshot of what you are working on. your attempted solution so I can review it and provide guidance. Okay, there's examples in your book that you can use as well. But please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Okay, so that is it for this problem. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.